On the tech side, you're going to have to lean into any tech that's going to, one, improve client experience, and two, make your lives easier, save on labor costs, save on helping your team just make their work more efficient. We're continuing to see new techs come out almost quarterly where it's like, all right, we have to look into this.
Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of The Connected Advisor. I'm your host, Kyle Van Pelt, co-founder at Milemarker. And today I am joined by Jay Tarno. Jay is the COO of Cornerstone Planning Group, and he is an avid golfer. Jay, thanks so much for joining the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I do love golf.
Likewise, man. Likewise. I know we were talking about some of that off the air before and just already some cool stories about that. We'll talk a little bit more about it. But I love to ask every guest the same first question on the show. Jay, you're not going to be any different. So over hundreds of these conversations on air and off air, I've found everybody has a unique path to the industry. Sometimes that path is traditional. They might have followed family footsteps. Sometimes it's coming in the side door from a different career or a different life outside of this. But whether your path's traditional or untraditional, I've found everybody has what we call a money moment. And that's that moment in your life where the light bulb went off and you decided that this is what you wanted to do for your career and how you wanted to serve people. So, Jay, for you, what was that money moment that led you to sitting in the chair you are right now having this conversation?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know if I dreamed of being a COO of a wealth management firm back when I was younger, but I always loved math. So I started studying finance and economics in college, and I was thinking of getting into the financial services industry, but I landed at an insurance company out of school. So I bounced around actually at a few insurance companies in production, and I loved the work I was doing. I mean, I got into the industry, let me go back a little, in 2008. So the housing market had just crashed. I looked like I was about 10 years old. So asking people at that time, which was very scary for everyone, to trust you was hard in itself. And I'm this young whippersnapper going and asking people for their trust. So I needed to definitely gain some experience. But over time, I did that. And I liked the work that I was doing, but I felt very transactional. So I would say for me, that moment was when I met our founder and CEO, Carmine Carino. So we got introduced by chance. I wasn't really looking for an interview or anything like that, but when I met him, I said, I'm kind of at a crossroads. I know I'm not really building a book of business or really creating long-term relationships with my clients. It was more transactional. And I met him and I told him, I want to be a fiduciary. I want to really create an impact for clients more than just being a transactional agent. And he was like, that's what I do. So we kind of hit it off from there. He had a firm. He was affiliated with an insurance company in the captive environment, but he started Cornerstone Planning Group back in the early 2000s. And I was in production for a few years. We were both growing and doing well, but he was always kind of hinting at he needed help with his book of business. So, we mentioned golf a little earlier. It was a hard decision to get out of production. And I wasn't sure what I was going to do, but I like using the golf caddy analogy. I felt like if I could help him, I'm not going to be hitting the shots, but I'm still going to be in the game. I'm still going to be, helping create impact for clients and really just working with him still helped me be in that position that I wanted to be, working with people, but also helping him grow his book of business. So we did that for a couple of years, and then everything changed in 2020 when we decided to open up the RIA and go the independent track.
Yeah, that's great. So I want to talk a little bit more about that. By the way, what a time to come into the industry. What a time to come alive.
Yeah.
I mean,
it was a scary time.
And you stuck it out. So that means you must have liked it.
I did. I loved working with people to answer your question. I loved working with people, but they obviously, between looking young and that was just, again, a scary time for everybody.
So Jay, that's incredible. And part of your story is going independent in 2020. And by my research, you had about $100 million, but you went independent in 2020. There was a major pandemic happening going on in the country. I mean, you've picked two crazy times for big life decisions. 2008 to come into the industry, you stick it out, you have some success. and then you and your partner decide you're going to go independent in, one of the craziest times of the year. You're at 100 million. And not only do you go independent, but you guys have 7x or more over the past couple of years through all of that turmoil. I mean, tell me the story there.
It was hectic, to say the least, because we originally were going to move in March of 2020. And March was right around the time where it went from, is this a real thing, to, holy cow, I have to stay in my house. I'm scared to see anyone and get sick. And COVID was just a scary time. We had an advisor go on a ventilator. So that was part of the reason we actually pushed our transition from March to May. And in May in 2020, we went the independent track, and we were obviously interviewing a lot of tech vendors, and there was a lot that goes into opening up a firm. We had this whole background of resources from our old firm, and they had taken care of a lot of things, but obviously we didn't like everything that they had to offer. So we started this firm from scratch in 2020, and it was a crazy time, but it was exciting. We definitely got comfortable very quickly, and 2020 was a big growth year for us. You remember the market was kind of scary early on, but the market kind of rebounded and boomed from March on to the end of that year. And we had brought over a couple advisors that year. So it was an exciting time for sure. And then in 21, advisors just from our old environment started reaching out to us, and they started saying, what is it like over there? So I don't think when we opened the firm in 2020, we thought we're going to have this type of shop where advisors are going to bolt on. We're going to offer resources like portfolio management and administrative support. But over time, especially in 2021 and moving forward, we started bolting on advisors who they wanted to not be in a captive environment. They wanted to have control of their business and be able to operate in the way that, they could, without any product requirements or any restrictions from being in a captive environment. And yeah, it's been a great run. We're continuing to obviously want to grow, but you have to grow the right way and make sure that you have your processes and your things in order. So
yeah, let's talk about that a little bit, because I know in 2020, a lot of the firms were like trying to figure out, okay, how do we go remote? How do we do all of these things? But I mean, you guys already had an established firm. It's not like you decided to start a firm in 2020. So do you feel like it was the same thing of, hey, we've just got to figure out what this looks like and we're just adding more work to the plate by going independent? Or do you feel like that was a whole, we've got to figure everything out from scratch, irregardless of what was going on in the country?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say part of it is status quo. We had a lot of virtual meetings, and we're kind of in that environment even pre-COVID. So from that standpoint, we were set up. And we knew that the work that we were going to do with our clients was going to be similar, but the story we told our clients, which was the truth, was your client experience is going to improve based on really technology, but based on everything that we had from our new custodian compared to, we were in a, let's just call it an archaic environment at this large insurance company for the prior years. So I would say a little bit of both. We built out our tech stack from the ground up. So that was at times frustrating, at times monotonous, going through those demo calls and doing a lot of just basically beta tests on some of these technologies. It's starting, as I'm sure everybody can relate to, when you're jumping into a new technology, just one, it's nerve-wracking. You got to really dive into it and you have to use it to learn it. But we had all new tech. So we were lucky in a sense because we could choose whatever technology we wanted, and we wanted the best in class across our tech stack. But we also had to make sure we, did the due diligence, because again, our old environment, it was a old way of thinking. Any technologies that got approved, it would take years to actually come to fruition. And now we had the independence and the autonomy to kind of move whichever way we felt was best for ourselves and obviously our clients.
That's great. I want to talk to you about that a little bit, actually, because I've got to imagine that that's somewhat overwhelming. You look at the entire Kitsis map. Sometimes I think people would think, what an exciting idea or concept to go build a tech stack from scratch. And I'm sure it is to an extent. But also, you don't have forever to figure this out. So you're on a tight timeline. You're trying to figure some of this stuff out. There's, a million options, more than ever before. How'd you navigate that? Did you have a system for just, all right, we're going to go solve, portfolio management first, and we're just going to demo all this stuff and run a process there, and then we're going to go from there? Or was it look at everything at the same time? Like, help me understand what the process was for picking this stack from scratch.
So Carmine Carino, our CEO, he is famous for saying, like, I'm never going to be the smartest guy in the room, but if I could surround myself with people, he's a big advocate of professional development. So He said, if I could surround myself with people who have either done it before or, obviously smarter people than me, I can be okay. So I would say that was part of our process. We reached out to people who were already in environments like us, and we asked, what technologies are you using? What works? What doesn't? So pretty quickly we could narrow it down. But to start, it was custodian. We needed to figure out, all right, where are we going to land? That was kind of number one. We took that seriously and we interviewed a number of them. We eventually landed on two, and we went with one that felt right for us. Ironically enough, the one that we didn't choose acquired the custodian that we did choose. I don't know if you didn't know this or not, but it's Charles Schwab. So Schwab is the big player in the game now, and we custody with Schwab. They've been great. We made that move in the fall of 23. But after we chose the custodian, then we started branching out and looking at things like performance reporting and financial planning softwares. And basically, we went from top to bottom. To your point, it was overwhelming at times. It is scary. You don't want to dive into something and then feel like you have to unwind it, because that's a process in itself. But at a certain point, you have to make a decision, which we did. The CRM, we kind of made the wrong decision. We went with something that we thought was right, and we ended up changing a couple of years after. But we've been with the same CRM since 2022. And I think we like to pride ourselves on technology. We are nimble enough, and we have, again, the autonomy to choose who we feel is best for us, is best for our clients. And I think that's the best part about it. It does require work, and it does require really diving into capability and everything else. But I would say that we're lucky in that sense. And I think that's hopefully an attraction to advisors. They have the ability to also be in an environment that prides themselves on technology.
You talked about a technology stack that serves your clients. And, I think you have two types of clients. You have advisors that they come underneath Cornerstone, and then you have your end clients. But we love to hear and talk about advisors who have a niche. And our understanding is that you support those types of advisors. And you have one advisor who they specifically work with auto mechanics, which I think is cool. I love hearing that type of stuff. So how do you support a firm with technology, all of this stuff that has advisors that are generalists? Hey, I work with retirees who look like this and look like this. And then people who have really specific niches of this is what we work like. I mean, is there any difference for Cornerstone, or is it pretty much the same?
I would say there is in some ways. So I mentioned earlier, we offer administrative support, and it's not a requirement. The advisors have the ability to have their own staff, or they have the ability to plug into our staff. So the staff members that are working with those advisors that have a niche, I think the work does differ a little than the ones who are generalists. But for any of the advisors that I'm starting to talk to from like a prospect stage, culture is the most important fit. And all the advisors that work with us, they focus on financial planning. And the advisor that works with auto mechanics, he's really into business exit planning. Some of these operators, they've built up these shops, and at a certain point, they don't really know what to do next. So the business exit planning and the work that he does with some of these auto shops, it's awesome, because they have the ability to dive super deep into, all right, we need to value the business. We also need to help you figure out, all right, what do you want? Because some of them, they don't know what's next after leaving their auto shop. So to get back to your question, it does and it doesn't. We will work and help that advisor if he has specific type of, obviously, planning softwares or work in general. But we also we do want to offer a general offering when it comes to service and make sure that they're taken care of.
This podcast is brought to you by Turncast. We make game-changing content for fintech and financial services companies. Learn more at turncast.com.
Hey, this is Judd Mackerel. Thanks for listening to this show. I just wanted to ask you one question. What's your technology and data strategy for 2025? If you can't clearly answer that question, I'd love to talk. We are spending some specific time with select firms to really go deep and help you clearly answer that question. We believe that it's one of the things that often holds back firms from really achieving their potential, from really achieving growth, and really getting a lot of the things in the position that they need to be. The things that are holding up the way that you scale, like your workflows, how you manage data around your revenue, how you report all of that to your advisors, and getting clarity in all those things. I'm sure there's a lot of very specific things to your business that are really important as well, and we'd love to talk about that. If this is interesting to you, hit me up with an email. My direct email is jud@milemarker.co, and I'd love to hear from you, hear what you're working on, hear what your strategy is, and see if there's an opportunity for us to help you get more clear on that strategy in 2025. Thanks.
All right. So Jay, you are the COO at Cornerstone. I actually love talking to COOs. I think it's a fascinating conversation because a lot of times COOs are actually not out there front and center on podcasts or things like that. Like they are, they're operating the machine. So I always love to ask this question. What do you think it takes to be a great COO at a growing RIA? Because there's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of things going on. You got to make sure you take care of the day-to-day stuff. Well, we got to process the paperwork. We got to do this. But then there's a bunch of other things that you got to do. And, I think most of the time finding great operators is tough because they're not very outward facing. So I always love to ask this question. What do you think it takes to be a great COO?
I'll self-admittedly say I'm learning on the job. I really am. And I say that because, as I said earlier, my experience came from production. So I feel comfortable being in front of clients. I mean, I took a role with Carmine as an associate advisor to start. So I was working with a lot of his clients. Actually, some of his clients still call and they're asking for me. And I'm like, I'm trying to politely educate them and say like, yeah, I'm not in that role anymore. But yeah, as an operator, I work with both our staff, all the advisors that we have, obviously our CEO. We hired a operations consultant at the end of 2022, and she is amazing. I give her so much credit. We lean on her a lot. She has helped me become a better COO. But from a processes and a workflow standpoint, we are light years different than we were before we hired her. We brought on a lot of advisors in 2022 to the point where we felt like, all right, we actually have to pause. We need to stop and make sure from an operational standpoint, we are in a position to support the advisors we have now and the advisors that we're going to want to bring on in the future. So we made about a 12-month pause where we just focused on ourselves internally. And we have a spot now where we are starting to grow. We bolted on an advisor this month. We're bolting on more this calendar year, but I see us doing that same pause again, probably at the end of next year, because there's certain points where if you're not looking inward and making sure that you are internally set up to support all of the advisors that you bring on, you're going to lose a lot of hair and you're going to be very stressed. Carmine always jokes because he's bald. He jokes that I had hair when I started this job. And it's stressful at times because if you don't have your processes in place, you're going to be pulling your hair out.
I like it. And part of operations and part of that pause or things like that is, and I think you were maybe a part of this, or this was inspired by you coming on, but you guys created a service team about a year ago and you've graduated 40 households to that service firm inside of Cornerstone and things are going well. Was that done to help you all get some scale? What was the impetus behind that decision?
Yeah. So we are continuing to try to search to make our advisors' lives easier. So Carmine was at a mastermind group and I think there were about 15 operators, and he had actually questioned the room. And he said, what are you and your advisors struggling with? And more than half the room said administrative support. So we were already providing portfolio management support for most of the advisors that were with us. But there was a time where some of these advisors were doing a lot of the processing themselves. And if they're doing that, obviously they're not focusing on helping their clients, or they don't have the time to do both. And processing paperwork and making sure that things are internally set up is a big part of the job that a lot of people don't really focus on. So we created this service team back, about a year and a half ago. And we're creating case studies as we go. But to the point you made earlier, one of the first advisors that adopted to the service team, he was able to cut the households that he had by about a third, and he doubled his revenue within 12 months. So he did other things. It wasn't just the service team, but the service team had a lot to do with freeing him up and letting him be in an environment where he could focus on helping his clients and could leave the back office work for us. So I pride ourselves on that team. They're amazing. We're continuing to grow it, and we have some great people, and we wouldn't be able to be the firm we are without them.
That's great. And then you guys also started paraplanning as an option. Is that kind of a part of what you were just talking about there, or is that a wholly separate initiative that you guys brought in?
Yeah, so that's a work in progress. And the main reason for that, we have one representative who is focused on planning, but truthfully, we are waiting to see what technology has to offer, because we are leaning into, I'm sure a lot of people that you talk to, AI is a hot topic. And I'm thinking, especially considering the work that we do with our planning softwares, I think technology is going to solve a big part of that. So yes, we are working on a planning avenue for our advisors, but I will say that I'm thinking that technology is going to be a big part of that, because one, it's going to save on labor costs, and two, if we can automate anything that we can automate, we are trying to.
Okay. So we're talking about automation.
Yeah.
We're talking about service team. And I think there's a beautiful marriage of this. You know, you're still going to need people, even with automation, even with team, everything
Absolutely.
like that. And part of the growth is recruiting new people, whether that's entry-level people or really experienced people. How do you guys approach recruiting and bringing new roles into the firm?
Yeah, hiring is a tricky subject because it's not easy. You know, it's a leap of faith for everyone. Obviously, it's a leap of faith for the firm because you are talking to 50, 100, 200 candidates, and you don't really know who you're going to get. We've been lucky, super, super lucky with the hiring that we've done. Just, I don't know if it's pure luck or Carmine jokes, he's not the decision maker there. He's the CEO, but he's a people pleaser, and he'll say yes to everyone, which obviously hiring, although we want to give as many people as we can an opportunity to work, you know, it has to be the right fit for us too. So we've used a number of platforms and obviously a lot of software going back to technology to help us with hiring, but experience is helpful. We did hire someone last June, Green, right out of college. He interned with us. It was a big learning curve in some ways because there were items like I remember sitting in the conference room about 3 months after he started, and I was waiting for a meeting and he was late. And I said, what's going on? And he's like, I didn't even know this was on my calendar. And I said, well, how often do you look at your calendar? He's like, I don't look at it. And it's just something that, for someone who's an experienced staff member, it's something that comes naturally. But for a newer employee, those are the bumps that you have to kind of get through to get them to where they need to be. But he has come a long way. He's an amazing team member. And yeah, I would say that hiring, although it is tricky, it's something I enjoy. It is, because you have to find the right person. But once you do, it's so rewarding just seeing them grow and evolve with the company.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Okay. I think this is a good chance to move into a segment we like, because we've talked about people, we've talked about technology, we've talked about automation. I love to ask guests to get out their crystal ball and talk to us about what they think is coming down the pipe in the future and what you're trying to position Cornerstone for. So you've kind of talked about the difficulties of hiring. You've talked about trying to automate. You've talked about building a tech stack. What are you looking at in the future? I know we talked AI a little bit, but anything besides AI, or do you can plow into that too, but what do you see coming that you're trying to position Cornerstone for?
I think it's a mix between technology and people. And what I mean by that is on the tech side, you're going to have to lean into any tech that's going to, one, improve client experience, and two, make your lives easier, save on labor costs, save on helping your team just make their work more efficient. So we're always looking for new technology. And I think if you look into the future, that might be an obvious answer, but we're continuing to see new techs come out almost quarterly where it's like, all right, we have to look into this. Obviously on the AI side, like we added an AI software just last month where it's helping with automation. It's speaking to some of our other techs. It's doing things that we used to have employees do before, but now it allows those employees to do other things because it's doing them for them. So that's what I think. AI is not going to eliminate people, but it's going to make their work more efficient. As for the people side of it, I think anyone can go to a Vanguard or a robo-advisor and get portfolio management help. I think portfolio management is something that is kind of, we're still going to focus on it, but it's not going to be the top of our pyramid. I think what we really want to look at, and yes, people are going into holistic financial planning, but I mean, head first, we have to provide an impact in that way. And I know Carmine, our CEO, talks about it often. He doesn't want our clients to just reach out to us when they are in need of help on the financial side of things. They want to call us for all things. We want to be almost their fix-it guy, whether it be, hey, I'm buying a new car, or I'm thinking about, looking at this property, or really anything. We want those relationships to be that kind of melded together. And I think that's going to be where you differentiate yourself. That's going to be the work that makes a client go from one firm to the next. Because if you're just doing a standard one review a year and here's how your accounts are doing, I think you're gonna fall behind for sure.
Yeah, I love that. All right, that's a great answer, man. And we're gonna move into the final segment of the show now, which we call the Milemarker Minute. It's like a series of lightning round questions aimed to be lighthearted, to get to know you a little bit better outside of all of the Cornerstone financial stuff. So you ready for the Milemarker Minute?
Let's do it.
All right. If you could travel anywhere in the world you've never traveled to before, where would you go?
Hawaii, for sure. It's been on the bucket list for me and the wife, and we've put it off a few times, but hopefully in the near future, we'll be able to be there because I hear obviously amazing things.
Do you have a specific island you want to go to, or anywhere in Hawaii? Or
I think Maui. I think we want to be in Maui. I also, unfortunately, I hear about it so often. Carmine goes to Maui basically every July for like a month. So he comes back tan and loving life. And I'm like, yeah, I get it. I know. I got to go.
I love it.
Yeah.
All right. I know you're a golfer. We talked about that a little bit before.
Yeah.
What is the number 1 or 2 golf courses on your golf course bucket list that you haven't played yet?
That I haven't played. I was lucky enough to play Pebble Beach a couple years back. I played Pine Valley last year. So I got lucky there. I would say the bucket list courses, there's probably 2. One is down in the Bahamas, Baker's Bay. I don't know if I'll ever be able to make it down there, but I hear amazing things. And I have to put the gem at the top. If I can ever get to Augusta National, I would obviously love to be on the grounds. I've been lucky enough to go there as a patron, and it is a unbelievable experience, but if I could tee it up there, that would be a dream.
I like it. You've talked about how Carmine is an avid reader and recommender of personal development stuff. What's the best book he's recommended that you can remember?
Yeah, we're going through it right now, actually, as a firm, Extreme Ownership, Jocko Willink, Leif Babin. It is amazing, just the messaging that they have in there. It's going to help you not only from in the professional standpoint, but it's making me a better human, honestly. And I know that kind of sounds cheesy, but, it makes you a better dad, a better husband. If you are looking at yourself first when there's an issue rather than pointing and figuring out, hey, this wasn't my fault, I think you can make not only your own environment better, but everyone around you.
Excellent.
Yeah.
What's the best flavor of ice cream?
Ooh. Flavor of ice cream, vanilla peanut butter. There's a local ice cream shop, and my wife has DoorDash. It's really dangerous because you just press a button and hit reorder, and it's on your doorstep within 20 minutes. But vanilla peanut butter with some Reese's on top. I'm a peanut butter guy, obviously.
Yep.
And sign me up.
That's great.
Yeah.
Okay. And then if you just had a big win, professionally or personally, and you're going to celebrate with a meal, like what is the meal that you're going to celebrate with?
I'm Italian, so part of me wants to say some homemade pasta dish, but I also am a sucker for a good filet and a good steak as well. As we were just talking about ice cream, I'm a dessert guy. So I do like food, but I really love sweets, probably too much. And I'll eat the meal, but let's get to like the chocolate cake.
Okay, well I got to ask you then, what's the best dessert you've ever had? Is there anything that stands out to you?
Oh, there is maybe actually at a golf club down in South Carolina, I had an amazing pecan pie that was awesome. I'm just a dessert guy in general. So sign me up for like a hot lava cake or, everyone's like, no, let's, can I get the check? I'm like, no, I want to see the dessert menu, please. This is what I'm here for.
Yeah, you're not discriminating against any desserts.
No.
I love it.
I'm
Jay, this has been a really fun conversation, man. You made it through the Milemarker Minute, some really fun answers in there, and then some super insightful answers to the other questions throughout the rest of the conversation. So thanks so much for taking time out to come on the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. All right, everybody, that's been another episode of The Connected Advisor. Please make sure you click follow or subscribe wherever you're watching or listening to this. And if you'd be kind enough, go leave a review so that people who haven't heard conversations like this great one with Jay can find the next one. But until next time, enjoy every mile.